For my classroom-based assessment, I will explore desertification and its effects on plant life, and a possible solution to be able to protect our global environment and curb climate change. My initial knowledge around desertification and my usual planning process allowed me to formulate key areas to start my research and analysis. These areas are: what is desertification, causes of desertification, when desertification occurs, impact on plant life, further impact on environment, impact on society, and solutions to prevent desertification. These points will be further broken down throughout this video. To understand what desertification impacts plant life, we must first understand what desertification is. Healthy soil is a home to a rich ecosystem of insects, worms, and a range of bacteria. These bacteria digest matter in the soil and converting it into food for vegetation and trees to grow. This in turn provides food for animals and people, but healthy soil is very vulnerable. It takes 500 years for 2.5 centimeters of soil to form, but can only take a few years to destroy it. This is desertification. To expand, desertification is the degradation of land and vegetation, soil erosion and the loss of topsoil, and fertile land in arid, semi-arid, and dry subhumid areas. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification has outlined the dangerous effects on our ecosystem and forestries desertification has. It has also been highlighted by the United Nations Social Development Goals, stating Goal 15 is about conserving life on land. It is to protect and restore terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and stop biodiversity losses. So, stopping desertification is the main front in protecting our forests. And this quote was taken from the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Um, Desertification is not a natural process. It is formed by the actions of humans and climate change. The result of these actions has caused a third of land to be threatened by desertification. Over the past decades, multiple factors have interacted together to lead to the degradation of and desertification of land. These factors are poor agricultural practices, deforestation practices, overgrazing practices, pressure, climate change. So, poor agricultural practices, which include monoculture farming, which is the farming of only one type of plant, cause depletion of minerals from the soil, excessive ploughing, which dries out the soil, improper irrigation systems that increased soil salinity, the amount of salt in the soil, which made land infertile and depleted the water table, which dried the soil further. Deforestation practices to clear land for farming led to the loss of vegetation cover, which increased soil erosion and reduces the land's capability to retain water. Overgrazing practices, grazing land beyond the capability of the land leads to the degradation of vegetation, making the land more susceptible to erosion and desertification. Population pressure has increased the demand for food, water, and land. This has led to the unsustainable exploitation of natural resources, contributing to desertification. Climate change has caused long periods of drought, which has also led to the drying out of the land. Altogether, these forces led to a vicious cycle of land degradation and desertification. So, where are the major examples of desertification? So, the region, Africa, the Sahel region, which spans across several countries in Africa, like Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Nigeria, Chad, Sudan, is one of the most severely affected lands. Um, the region experiences recurrent droughts, soil degradation, and desert encroachment, leading to food insecurity, loss of livelihoods, and environmental degradation. The next one is the Gobi Desert. The Gobi Desert, located in northern China and southern Mongolia, is another area highly susceptible to desertification. Rapid population growth, overgrazing, deforestation, and unsustainable land use practices have contributed to soil erosion, desertification, and the land degradation in the region. The Australian outback. The Australian outback, particularly in the regions such as the Murray-Darling Basin and the outback Queensland, is experiencing desertification due to the factors such as prolonged drought, land clearing, soil salinity, and invasive species. Desertification in the Australian outback has significantly impact for agriculture, water resources, and biodiversity, posing challenges for sustainable land management and conservation efforts. So we can see these examples more clearly when we look to this world map. We can see that the effects of desertification can be seen on every continent: China, India, Africa, USA, Australia, and 13 countries in Europe are all affected by soil degradation. In total, 110 countries are affected by soil degradation. These figures were taken from DW News, a German news broadcasters. Annually, this has caused 20 million tons of grain to be lost through desertification. These facts were taken from the BBC. So, accepting these facts, let's take a more detailed look at the impacts of desertification, starting with the impacts on plant life desertification causes. So, root system change, failure in seed germination, vulnerability to disease are all factors leading to a high risk of mortality in plants. These environmental factors can be seen impacting plant roots at the molecular level, cellular, tissue, and organ level. At the molecular level and cellular level, plants detect temperature change, triggering physiological and signaling processes, membrane fluidity, and composition change causing activation of calcium channels. In addition, feedback loops enhance calcium levels into the cells. This can be seen on the image on the right. Heat shock transcription factors, known as HSFS, calcium dependent proteins, kinases, CDPKS, and mitogen accepted protein kinases, MAPKS, are activated by calcium and ROS redox signaling. Accumulation of unfolded proteins in the endoplasmic reticulum activates the unfolded proteins responses, UPR. Cyprotective pathway activation of BCIP transcription factors leads to the expression of heat shock proteins, HSPS. HSPS proteins um, from misfolding and help detoxify reactive oxygen species, ROS, once again seen on the right. Then ARP6 mediates the insertion of histone variant H2A.Z in the nucleosome. At warmer temperatures, H2A.Z and HSF1 play antagonistic roles required for activating heat responses, HR, gene transcription. Rapid adjustment of stress response components, abundance, and functions via alternative splicing machinery. So we can now see how the impacts on the molecular and cellular level from increased temperatures transfer onto the tissue and organ level, causing physiological responses. Specifically, we look at how they impact root growth. Roots respond to increased temperature change caused by climate change. At the tissue and organ levels, plant cells communicate through channels to adapt their root structure, development, and functionality to ensure water and nutrient availability is still functional in stressful environment conditions. Changes in root structure include changes in lateral and primary root growth, root hair elongation, and adjustment of interchange with above ground organs. Roots experience changes in metabolism, particularly affecting carbohydrate amino acid balance, lipid metabolism, and activation of heat and oxidative pathways to maintain root growth. Temperature mediating alterations in hormonal levels trigger signal transduction pathways to help plants overcome stress. Molecular changes uh, regulating root adaptation include global transcriptic reprogramming channels in protein profiles and activation of epigenetic and base mechanisms. In the field, increasing temperatures often accompanies other abiotic and biotic stresses such as drought, salinity, nutrient deficiency, and pathogen infections. Root growth integrate and respond to various stresses to promote survival and maintain growth. So this can be seen again in this slide. We can see how root growth is affected. Carbohydrate balance, lipid metabolism, RRS, transcriptions or reprogramming, protein hemostasis, post-translational modifications, abiotic and biotic combined stresses, hormonal levels and signaling, root system architecture, root shoot ratio, and coordination, root hair length and number are all impacted by desertification and climate change. Moving on, let's now look at how seeds are affected by desertification. In extreme desert conditions, seeds do not germinate until the water supply is sufficient for seedlings' survival. This is a problem in areas where the water table has been depleted and the soil is dried out, as stated previously, through overclouding. Temperature can greatly affect seed germination. We have previously seen how desertification and climate change has caused risk has caused a rise in temperature in the local environment. This temperature rise is not favorable for seed germination. Light can also affect some species of plants who prefer to germinate in shade and some who only germinate in darkness. In areas with no shade to be found, these species can fail to germinate at all. Many environmental conditions can affect disease in plants, but temperature change can cause a significant increase in plant disease. This susceptibility to disease speeds up the process of desertification by increasing the rate of plant death. My own experience with desertification. I personally saw how poor agricultural practices by predominant monoculture farming styles drained minerals in the soil and dried up the soil up. Also, how population pressure is causing a huge strain on the water table and climate change has added to the rate of desertification. This has caused the soil to become an impossible area to grow plant life, especially at lower altitudes where the salinity is higher in the Canary Islands. Conclusions on the impact of plant life. The effects of desertification impact plants at the molecular, cellular, tissue, and organ level, whilst also affecting seed germination and susceptibility to disease. Further impacts on the environment. Loss of biodiversity. Desertification leads to the destruction of habitats, reducing biodiversity as native plants and animals struggle to survive in degraded environments. Soil degradation. The loss of topsoil due to desertification reduces soil fertility, making it difficult for vegetation to grow. This can lead to further erosion and land degradation. Water scarcity. Desertification often reduces the availability of water sources as soil loses its ability to retain moisture. This could lead to water scarcity for both humans and wildlife. Climate change. Desertification contributes to climate change by releasing carbon stored in vegetation and soil, further exab- exer- exacerbating global warming. Additionally, the loss of vegetation reduces the land's capacity to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Impacts on society. Desertification reduces the productivity of land, making it difficult for farmers to grow crops and sustain livestock. This can lead to food shortages and economic instability in affected regions. Desertification can force people to migrate from affected areas in search of food, water, and livelihoods, leading to social disruption and potential conflicts over scarce resources. Land degraded by desertification is more susceptible to natural disaster such as floods, droughts, and wildfires, which can further exacerbate environmental degradation and human suffering. Actions taken to stop desertification. The United Nations World Food Programme is planning to create a barrier of trees across the Sahel region of Africa to stop the southern expansion of the Sahara Desert. They are doing this by providing courses to the local farmers on how to regenerate land. This land recovery program has most commonly been called the Great Green Wall. This recovery is stopping further desertification from happening and recovering deserted land as well. This is done by implementing syntropic farming methods which aim to mimic forest dynamics. The World Food Programme design design starts by first digging half-moon crescents which retain water when it rains. This allows for the retention of water in the land and recharges the water tables. They then dig planting lines of horticultural planting beds with local species of plants. This allows the locals to have a range of sources of fruits and vegetables. The next step involves creating trenches where biomass from plants can drive rejuvenation, and then finally planting trees. These trees create anchors to the soil and stop land from becoming a desert. Evaluating findings. Desertification and its effects on plants has a strong link to wood science and the learning outcomes associated. This topic links with the Learning Outcome 3.2, as during the CBA we went into depth of the structure and makeup of trees at the molecular, cellular, tissue, and organ level, and seeing how they are affected by desertification. With regards to Learning Intention 1.12, I discovered how sustainable farming practices taken up by the United Nations World Food Programme can protect our environment. Finally, regarding Learning Outcome 3.1, understanding desertification and how to prevent it is one of the main fronts to protect our forest areas and woods from danger and curb climate change. Desertification has far-reaching impacts on every continent in the world, leading to environmental and social issues. With regards to the environment, we have seen how desertification can cause a loss of biodiversity, soil degradation, water scarcity, and climate change. On a social level, desertification impacts agricultural and farmers' livelihoods, displaces communities, and increases the risk of natural disasters like flash floods. Overall, I have learned what desertification is, the causes of desertification, where it occurs, impact on plant life, further impact on the environment, impact on society, and the solutions we can take to prevent desertification. Here are my resources and media links that I used for this presentation. Thank you very much.